share. Awesome, everyone. So welcome. We're going through some of the Google Tools Suite today. And essentially, these are tools that are provided by Google in order to leverage your SEO or essentially make your SEO pop out a bit more. A few of these tools are like Google My Business, Google Trends, Google Analytics, which are very useful. And more of these we'll get more into. But essentially, these are helpful, just free tools that you can use for the most part to help boost your SEO. There's a few videos that I will post to go through as well, but essentially I wanted to discuss what Google My Business is as well. Google My Business is a very nice way to search for local businesses and see what type of information they have. For example, if I go into Google My Business here, I will have to manage it here, but essentially what you can do is if you look at any of these business pages, this is what the Google My Business is. So if we look at, whoops, that's my guy there. Let me look up the Black Dog Gelato again. Down here inside of this little A section where all this is what Google My Business is. So essentially Google My Business helps us show off the reviews on Google here if you want to see it. Information pre-built in, it's 4 miles away. Some utilitarian information about can we dine in? No, but we can do takeout and delivery. Some health concerns and the hours. So Google My Business essentially provides you a bunch of ways so that people can see how your business runs, if they can book there, and reviews of it as well. If you have a really well-made Google My Business, it really helps out with getting out to people as well, because whenever you type something in onto Google, it will show you that Google My Business there. You need to verify your business first and then update the business information as needed, but there's a ton of tutorials out there to help with that. Now, there's another cool guy called AdWords Keyword Planner, and then this is how we can come up with keywords. So in DM150, we were thinking about, okay, how do I figure out my keywords and phrases that I'm going to use inside of my content? And we remember that sometimes we get a bit repetitive with our keywords. Whenever, I know for me, if I'm ever writing, I kind of have this issue where I only am able to pick around a few different words that I keep going back to. I kind of cycle through 5 or 6 different types of words. And essentially that's not the best because we're not we're limiting ourselves in the reach of what our keywords could be. So what AdWords Keyword Planner does is it goes ahead and it determines multiple terms that can be used with another term as well. And that's a very fancy way of saying, if I go ahead and type this guy in for us here. Sorry, everyone. This will be our keyword planner. Essentially, as you can see here, for a small example, we have the summer apparel, and then inside of summer apparel, some keywords might be sandals, bathing suits, jean shorts. And then, of course, if you go to the keyword planner, this looks a bit more in-depth than I'm used to. I wonder how I can make one really quick. Sorry, it seems like they updated it. Sorry, everyone. But this is why we have... There it is. Cool. So if I go ahead and try to discover new keywords, maybe I might be trying to figure out the glass installation. And then as you can see here, keywords, and they, excuse me, and they tell you the average monthly searches. So right here, one keyword that is very popular is window replacement near me, and that gets around 10,000 to 100,000 searches every month. So if you are missing out on this specific set of keywords onto your website, you are kind of crippling yourself. And as we go down more, the less higher traffic keywords there are. But as you can see here, this one is very effective to use. And there's another one here, dog door and glass sliding. So that was another one. Maybe you might be able to do that. But as you can see here, that one also gets a lot of views as well. So this is an, excuse me, everyone. Sorry. This is a nice way to figure out the keywords that you want to use on your website, and it shows lots of different ways to use it too. Great. So we have a Google Trend, and Google Trends are ways that we can figure out the flow and trends of what's going on. You can figure out how terms and keywords are operating inside of your website currently, and it's very useful to determine if what you have built into your website right now is effective or not. Let me just pull up a quick image of it here. And as we can see here, this is what the world is searching for. Ramen, for instance, has tons of searches over here based on. You could also figure out where your where these items are coming from too, based on location. And as we can see, truck shell, truck cap, truck canopy, they're all in these areas here too. So Google Trends is another very effective way to be able to figure out which of your keywords and stuff you're working with. And the nice thing about it is that all these are made by Google, so you can just kind of use the one Google to figure out all your business. So a lot of this SEO stuff, you don't need to go out and like kind of keep track in a notebook of what the keywords are. You can literally just say, okay, which keywords are very popular in current time. Page speed insights is a nice way to figure out how fast your page is loading. And again, the websites that, websites with higher loading speeds are going to be more favored by the crawlers. So you want to make sure that whatever way you're designing your website, it loads fast, and that goes into how you code it and the type of images you use and other areas like that. Essentially, you can't make a really big website and then expect it to load fast. So make sure that whenever you're doing the design of your website that you take into account the load speed. And this just reiterates the idea that SEO and design of the website go hand in hand. You can't really focus on one and ignore the other. Again, the page speed depends on your hosting, people who host you, the design of the website, and hardware that the person is using for the website as well. There's a cool little link here. Go ahead and open it up. If we go ahead and type in the website that we want to analyze, it's going to figure out the speed of it. After a little bit there, excuse me. Then let's see. Okay, it might take a little bit more than I expected, sorry. But we can just go ahead and see that we are waiting for this guy to wrap up. Great. And as we see here, let's see here, we have, so there's a lot of information that is brought back to us here. Essentially though, the speed, excuse me, that the result here of the field data is that it does not pass the Core Web Vitals assessment, which is an assessment that Google provides to figure out what a website is doing properly or not. And as you can see here, how long it loads from good to poor, the interactivity of it as well, and then the layout shift that it has too. You don't need to worry about any of this. All you really need to see is if it passes or not. And of course, if you went to, what if we did youtube.com? Do you guys see how a bit faster it is there? Well, it might take a little bit more too. But again, I'll leave that to the side while it's loading. But we could see that page speed essentially gives us back how fast the page loads. Now, Google Analytics is a great way to show off how your website's doing with traffic, the trends of the history searches and stuff like that, and the statistics of your site. And then, of course, you can find out the pages that have poor traffic or they have a bounce rate as well. And funnily enough, going back to the page speed, it seems like YouTube also does not pass the vital thing. So don't freak out if it doesn't or not, because this one is one of the bigger websites. You can also get information about search keywords that are used the most often to reach your website. And that's the most important, because what you're going to do then is you're going to determine those keywords by using Google Analytics and then put those keywords back into that keyword generator to get more keywords that work. Google Analytics will also tell you if you're getting traffic from outside links, domains. It's allowing you to set up custom goals and events that help streamline to your websites. You might be able to use Google Analytics to help do like a giveaway or some type of program on your website. Let's just say that your website is about technology and developing like computers. You might be able to do a computer giveaway on the website. Again, Google Search Console is a nice utility tool that helps analyze your website's indexing and monitors your Google search ranking. Let's see if I can pull it up here for you guys. Cool. Google Search Console will essentially inspect the URL that you provide for it, and it will determine if it's doing well or not. So again, all of these tools are really nice to use, but make sure that you don't think that they're the end all, or sorry, make sure that you don't think that you only have to use one or two. You can use as many of these tools as you would like. Excuse me. Cool. All right. Now, this is a bit of, so for our participation today, I wanted to make sure that all these features that we talked about and then the previous features as well are discussed. But the what we're about to look at here is, this is what I mentioned earlier, where if this gets a bit overwhelming, don't worry, because there's a lot to digest here. And I don't want to harp on these too long. The cool things that I wanted to show you guys were those tools that allow you to build up your website and monitor how it's performing. What I'm doing here is just showing off various features that the Google Search Console and Google have developed to help streamline the SEO process. Excuse me. So what you could do with this Google Search Console is you're able to download reports that is associated with data elements on your site. And again, this sounds a bit high tech, but let's just say that you have someone that develops a website for you. You could download a report in case you think it's not doing well, and you could hand them the report to let them digest it. A data highlighter is an interesting tool. And remember, what we're talking about here with these features, just to reiterate, is that these features aren't just randomly out there. These are features that are built into the Google Search Console. So these are all features that help optimize your SEO and are effective at it. If you cannot access the back end of a website, for instance, let's just say that someone else developed it for you and you don't have any access to it, you can use the Google Search Console once you have figured out once you have proved you have ownership of the website to implement the structured data. HTML improvements are really important, and then essentially if you coded up the website or if it's been a while since you've checked the code, this will go about check if there's any errors in the code, have any missing tags, like if there's a missing title end tag, give you the meta descriptions. Excuse me. And then make sure that content that isn't content that's not indexable, or essentially that can't be found by the search engine, is flagged because it's not important. After that, you can go ahead and make changes per the report that it gives back to you. Site links are shortcuts that Google generates for you, and that helps with the deep website navigation. Essentially what that means is you can figure out how to navigate your website or how to link to a specific page. And essentially this will tell you that if certain websites or pages on your website are irrelevant or not, if they're not getting clicked. Excuse me. Search traffic is another aspect of Google Search Console that is pretty cool. And this allows you to figure out which pages are visible inside of the website the most. You can see the count of how many times your website appears in search results using specific keywords. So essentially what you can do with search traffic is you can do something like, oh, okay, I am using the keyword glass installation, and I'm going to type it in. How many times has my website popped up when someone typed in glass installation? And if you find that it's not popping up at all, you might say, okay, well, now I need to work on my keywords, right? Because this one isn't working. Search analytics are a way that you can figure out the traffic and be able to filter it based on geolocation. Let me show you one more time here. If we go ahead and take a look at some of these guys here, we'll see again that these search analytics essentially tell us, okay, we have 248 clicks, total impressions were 23,000. The average position that we have of our website is at the 47th position, which is really good. And as you can see here, as we keep developing this more and more, we might see that our website just gets boosted up even more. Essentially, in this part here with links to your site, you're going to be able to determine who is linking to your site from outbound links. So essentially, where these links originate. And this is going to be very helpful because what do we say about websites linking to your page? You want to make sure that they're reputable and that they're good websites. So if you use Google Search Console and you figure out that, okay, my website is for some reason being linked from this website that isn't appropriate and doesn't look good, and that would harm my image, I'm going to go ahead and figure out a way to unlink them. And essentially, this is a nice way to monitor how people are finding your website outside of keywords and searches. Cool. Manual actions are essentially what happens if we get penalized by Google. You can figure out what Google is telling you, why they're penalizing you. You can be told what type of actions you could take to fix up these errors and where to go from there. International targeting is a really cool way to figure out how to make your website a bit more localized. And remember, localization was that aspect of being local to a person's current area. Essentially, what this will do is going to identify the language along with the location of each web page. And this here with international targeting, you can go ahead and determine your website to target certain countries. So as you can see here, if you add in the .uk, that will help you target United Kingdom. Now, here's a really important one that I think is useful for all of us as well that we went over, is that Google Search Console allows you to check how usable your site is on mobile. And why that is important is because the majority of people use phones now. So if you have a website and it's just completely unreadable on mobile, and this report that Google gives you a ton of issues, you're going to need to take some time to fix that, because otherwise you're going to be missing out on a lot of customers and stuff and potential work. The Google Index helps get you information about the pages on your site, and essentially what that will tell you is if the pages on your site have been indexed. It helps you remove URLs that are inappropriate and essentially kind of clean up your site a little bit. And this is always important because if you have links on your website that just go to like a random test page that you made, or an inappropriate page, or maybe it's just an old page, you want to make sure that those are gone so people can't see them. Index status is a very basic tool that pretty much says pages on your site haven't been indexed by Google yet. That's all that says there. And that means that you need to figure out a way that you can get those indexed. Content keywords are a nice way to figure out which ones are getting attracted to your website. And again, we went over this a little bit before, but content keywords are crucial for figuring out what people use to search for your website on Google. Blocked resources in the Google Search Console is a term, excuse me. There's this part's a little interesting with this robots.txt file, so we can delve into it a little bit. But essentially what happens here, one second. Okay, excuse me. So with these, with these blocked resources here, essentially what happens is you can tell Google to not worry about some things that don't need to be indexed. For example, if on your website you have a private page that lists what's a good example of this? So if you are developing apps for Apple, you might have to provide a privacy policy about what the application does, and you actually need to provide that policy in a URL. So what that means is that you need to maybe you want to make a privacy policy for that URL to develop the app, and you're going to post it on your website because that's where the URL is going to be. But you don't want strangers seeing that policy, right? You don't want people that go to your website to say, oh, I'm here to buy gelato ice cream, see a privacy policy about an application that they have no idea about. So what you could do is you could tell Google to say, hey, block this resource. I don't want anyone seeing this. And it has to be on my website, but I don't want anyone to see it. And what that means is that unless someone has access to the identical URL that you might change up a bit, they won't be able to see that privacy policy. Here's a very basic feature that I think is important. Essentially, this removes URLs from a web page. They aren't going to be indexed. You can figure out how to block them at the start. But essentially that if your previous one where you don't block that URL doesn't work, you can ask Google to remove the URL. Crawl is a very nice thing where Google provides you information about what happens when they crawled your site. Essentially, whenever the crawler finds your site and makes a report of it, the information that it finds can be listed here. Crawl errors are very nice, and essentially what happens is Google will say, hey, when we were searching your website, we found a few errors, and some errors might say something like, hey, a 404 page is not found, or maybe an image is missing, and stuff like that as well. Once you go ahead and fix these errors that the crawl returns, you're able to update your web page, and that will probably boost your standing with Google. Statistics of the crawl again, and let me go ahead and... Oops, it is everyone, sorry. Cool. So these crawl stats and stuff like this as well is able to show you what each of these Google sites are doing, and it's able to give you a report here. For instance, here's the crawl stats of what's going on there. Now, this is a bit more broad, but you can essentially look at your Google Search Console and figure out its crawling statistics and its reports, and any errors, excuse me, any errors that occur are given back to you. So if you see here, there's an acceptable fail rate recently in the robots.txt file that used to be a lot higher in the past, but now it's a bit better. And if you see you're in server connectivity, the crawl will give back the report that says, hey, there's a high fail rate with connecting to your server to last week. Great. Fetch as Google is a way that Google renders a web page. Essentially here with Google, you're going to be able to see how Google renders your page, and then also launch your browser. And then this will help you boost SEO processes for your site because you're able to see what actually happens here. Again, this robots.txt file, it sounds a bit weird, but all it is a file that you write to tell Google to skip certain pages. Remember how we talked about, hey, don't check this one, don't check this privacy URL. Don't worry about this script that I wrote because it's just about checking if someone clicked on a certain button on my page, so you don't need to index those. Great. Sitemaps are another crucial factor, and another crucial factor is that off-page SEO that we talked about. Essentially, if you have off-page SEO, they can help you rank higher in the search results. And again, as a remark, the off-page SEO factors are things like blogging, localization, people that link your website, and then social media. URL parameters are a pretty fancy way in Google Search Console of figuring out how you can determine Google to look at your URL. Essentially, this is a nicer way for Google to look at your website a bit faster, but it's not a huge deal, I would say. Excuse me. And then, of course, at the very end, there's some security sections in Google Search Console where if you get hacked or anything like that, you're able to find more information about this. Now, I just went ahead and I discussed a lot of features here that are embedded into Google Search Console. And what I'll do is a bit later on, I'm going to go ahead and try to bring up my version of the Google Search Console and see if we can explore some of the features and see what it's doing for us. Okay, let me